Back in the second season of Classic, there was an episode that impacted the fandom in a way where the fandom would never be the same again. The idea of fusions between Ben's aliens. In Dr. Animo and the Mutant Ray, Ben accidentally knocks off the wideband of the Omnitrix, causing it to malfunction. When Ben uses the Omnitrix, it's in between selection modes of different aliens, meaning that he becomes fusions of two aliens in the Omnitrix. In the episode, we get to see a fusion of Stinkfly and Forearms, Grey Matter and Diamond Head, and Heat Blast and Ripjaws. The episode itself is pretty good, however the impact it left on the fandom is even better. This led to a whole bunch of fan-made fusions, but today I wanted to rank the official fusions that were drawn by Tom Perkins. Back during the prime era of the Classic series, or at least I like to think of it as the prime era, aka Season 3, the DNA Lab was on Bandai.com's Ben 10 website, where you could basically get codes from the battle-ready figures and basically fuse different aliens to see what they look like. With it being the great year of 2024 at the time of this recording, we no longer have that website available officially. However, there is a way to still have an emulation of it, which is pretty neat. It was actually really nostalgic to go through. I'll put a link to that down below. As far as the fusions themselves, you can see them all on the Ben 10 wiki, but it was really cool back in 2007 being able to get the figurines or find the codes online and then fusing all the aliens. I absolutely love doing that, and I wanted to rank all the designs of every single fusion available on the website. This means we'll be seeing a fusion of every alien that Ben has in seasons 1 to 3.
No, not you, Seamus.
Ah, poo.
Yeah, except him. There's not much else to explain, so shall we begin? Okay, so how I'm gonna do this is, I'm not gonna do like alien by alien, as I feel like that'd be a little monotonous, so I'm just gonna do every fusion, just jump around until all of them are ranked, just for the sake of variety. So if you're waiting for a certain alien, it could just be at any point in the video. So first we're gonna start with the Diamond Head and Wildmud fusion. I just want to randomly start with this one, because I think this one's pretty solid. I really like how the orange crystals on his body look, and I like how instead of the little quills, it's actually the spikes that Diamond Head has. That's pretty neat. And I do like how he has a bit of a suit with the whole like black and white pattern. That's pretty cool. I love when Diamond Head fusions have like the patterns sort of like opposite to each other. Kind of like how you can see like right before his toes, you have like the white rim on one leg and then the black rim on the other. Honestly, this fusion reminds me a lot of the Diamond Head Bear fusions from the Protector of Earth video game, so that's kind of a plus on its part. And I also like how you can see crystal versions of Wildmud's like nostril gill things. Overall, I think this one could go into A tier. This is a really good fusion. It doesn't do too much, but it does enough to I think it's a perfect blend between Wildmud and Diamond Head. Next we have Wildvine and Stinkfly's fusion, which I feel like could have been a little more creative. This one kind of feels like it's just Wildvine with Stinkfly elements plastered on, rather than like actually fused with the design. Considering Stinkfly's Bugfly appearance and the fact that Wildvine has Venus flytrap motifs, I feel like this design should be an S tier, but this one's so simple. Like even the suit is really simple. It doesn't even have like, you know, the like stripe pattern and Stinkfly normally has. This is definitely one of the more basic fusions in my opinion, so I think this one's gonna get a D tier, only because it's not outright awful, and I feel like there's still a slight amount of effort in, just not that much. In terms of actually fusing them, again, the art's great, obviously, but in terms of like the fusion itself, I think it's pretty damn simple. Now we move on to Heat Blast and Upgrade. A lot of Heat Blast's fusions I feel like are kind of on the basic side, but thankfully I think Heat Blast and Upgrade is not one of them. I like how the Techno pattern is kind of like the Molten Rock pattern that Heat Blast has, and not only is it on the black part of Upgrade's body, but it also kind of melds with the white part of his body too. I think that's a neat touch. And I also like how his chest has one segmented part, kind of like what Heat Blast normally has. I also absolutely love the like fire head with the little like techno eye on his faceplate. That's pretty cool. And I do like how his legs kind of meld into the Heat Blast feet rather than just being the stubs that Upgrade has. I think this one could get an A tier. I think out of all the Heat Blast ones, this is one of the more creative ones, but we'll see later on how Heat Blast designs go either really hard or really simple. Next up, we have Diamond Head and Frankenstrike's fusion. This design actually grew a lot on me because I didn't remember much about this design, but looking at it now, I love how certain parts of his crystal body are different shades of color, similar to Frankenstrike's skin. And I love how like his feet patterns like the Frankenstrike has is implemented into the design with the suit. They could have easily just made it like the black and white that Diamond Head has, but you know, there's an extra effort to actually have some Frankenstrike elements in there. I also really like the cracks around like the little bolts in his chest. That's such a neat detail too. The face is a little odd looking considering there's no hair. I'm not used to a hairless Frankenstrike, but overall I think my only downside with the design is honestly the fact that he he has the towers on his back still being regular towers. I wish there was some crystal elements there, or at least diamond head colors to make it feel more like a fusion. I think this one honestly gets an A tier. I actually really like this fusion a lot. As for Ghost Freak and Forearms' fusion, this one's a bit on the basic side, but I kinda like it. I feel like this is one of those fusions that doesn't need to be super complicated. It kinda makes me think of like a giant hanging ghost puppet, if that makes any sense. I like how he has long fingers. I like how he has like a little like forearms fang that's kind of funny looking. This design just reminds me of like a big ghost puppet, so there's not much to really say, so I think this one gets a B tier. I like it. Don't love it, just like it. Next is Blitzwolfer and Upchuck's fusion, and this one's kind of a weird one for me. I'm not sure how to evaluate this one. I do like it, and there's some details I do appreciate. For example, I like how his jaw is kind of inward and you could kind of see a bit of it. He kind of looks like a gummy bear or a candy that got chewed up and it's like a bite mark and stuff. I like how he has like the Upchuck teeth exposed and he has like still has the Blitzwolfer snout and everything. But I don't know, this one's like, you know, just weird looking to me in a good way. So I think this one's gonna get a B tier. I don't really love it, and I can't think of a reason to really love it. As for Forearms and Heat Blast, this is one of those basic Heat Blast fusions I was talking about. This one doesn't do that much, honestly, which is a shame. I feel like maybe if they made him have like darker red for his flames or something, or I don't know, just anything to make it feel more unique. Heat Blast's designs, I just feel like a lot of them feel so basic. I get that Heat Blast's character design doesn't seem like something you could really incorporate into a lot of fusions. I mean, look at Ripjaws and Heat Blast in the actual episode. But like, I don't know, I just feel like there's definitely something you could do with this type of design. It's just, there's nothing really done here. The only thing I could think of that's kind of unique is that he does have like the little forearms arm spikes and he has like the little strap for his chin, but that's really it. That's really not much to go off of. If I'm being honest, I think this one deserves a D tier. It's really basic. Now we have Accelerate and Snarrow. If you just told me that without showing me the design, I'd probably want to give it an S rank considering these are my two favorite aliens in Classic. But as far as the design goes, I do like a lot about it. I love that he has like a palish, like light turquoise sort of color to him, almost like a grayish blue actually. And I love how his face is not just a basic helmet, but it has more of the Snarrow face elements instead. I also like that instead of the basic claws, he actually has bandages like Snarrow. I also like that he has like the inner like green glowing parts of his bandaged chest, and I also like the neck veins. That's kind of a neat detail to make him feel more monstery. The tail also being multiple bandages is also really neat. Maybe this is like super biased, but I kind of want to give this one an S tier. It's my two favorite aliens in Classic. I can't help myself. It's my list, I don't care. Now we have Upgrade and Wild Mutt. I think this fusion's okay. I like that he has like fangs despite being more Upgrade than Wild Mutt besides his body proportions, and I do like that he has a techno pattern that kinda emulates the nostril gills that Wild Mutt has. A part of me kinda wishes he didn't have the eye, like it kinda implies that this Wild Mutt does have eyes, which is, I don't know, something about that just feels wrong to me, but it's not that big of a deal. I think this one gets a C tier. It's pretty alright. Next is Frankenstrike and Upchuck, and this design is so good. Where do I even begin? The tongues having electrical components and wiring is so good. I love the fact that he has like his hair kind of connected to where his eyes and like his, does he have gills? Like what would you call this? But like it's so good. Like this fusion gets an S tier. This is such a good design. As for Stinkfly and Ghost Freak, I kind of like, and I just noticed this, I kind of like the fact that his wings sort of have like this like vein attachment to the back of his neck. That's a really cool detail, as really tiny as that is. Like that's a tiny detail, but I love it. I love that his eyes look kind of like withered and his legs are withered and he has the little like spikes near his wrist. That's such a good detail. I love how his arms look so uneven because he just looks like an abomination ghost phantom insect. Like this is a really good design too. This one gets a solid A tier. This is fantastic. Cannonbolt and Accelerate's fusion. Oh my god, look at that face. He looks like he's in pain. He looks like he hates to exist. Like, oh my god. Honestly, I guess this fusion's like, okay. There's not too much I really like about it. This has like that plastering problem that Stinkfly and Wildvine had. It kind of looks like Accelerate's face is just his regular face stretched out with Cannonbolt eyes squinting. That's, I don't know, that's not really that good to me. I'm not sure how you would make this design more unique, but I just feel like this one's like kinda meh, so I'm gonna give this one a D rank. Snarrow and Wildvine's fusion is, oh my god, this is so good. Like, holy shit. I forgot how good some of these fusions are. The eyes, just the eyes alone. Look at the golden blades. I love that his like snap trap has kind of like, it looks like curled up paper from like confetti or something, or like Medusa's snake head. S tier. I don't even have to even think about this one. Holy shit. It also helps that Snarrow and Wildvine have some of my favorite designs in the classic series, so just them together is just perfection. Holy crap. As for Stinkfly and Blitzwolfer, I'm not sure what I think of this one. I think what I would have done with this design is still have Blitzwolfer's split mouth, but make it bug-like, because it just feels like they have Blitzwolfer's face with the eye stalks and the Omnitrix badge edited on. The veins are a nice detail, but that's not much to really save this design. I do like how the suit is kind of a mixture of the stripe pattern Stinkfly has and the little line patterns that Blitzwolfer has, but there's not that much detail on his arms or legs, and he doesn't even have wings either, which is not that bad. I do like when they kind of deviate from the expected, so him not having wings isn't that big of a deal, but it just feels empty without him in this particular case. I think this one's gonna get a C tier because there are things that I find okay about it, there just feels like it's lacking. Next we have Wild Mutt and Heat Blast, which is actually one of the better ones despite not being necessarily that different. I do like how he has tectonic plate patterns for his, again, nostril gills. I don't know what to call them, I'm sorry. And I do like how his quills are still emphasized. The fact that his jaw is separated from the rest of his face instead of just being one whole big rock is a neat detail as well. There's not entirely anything totally unique about this design. I feel like one thing that would have helped but barely is maybe make his like claws have rock patterns instead of being a yellow like the magma, but that's just me personally. I think this one's gonna get a C tier as well because this one again is a little basic like most of the Heat Blast fusions honestly. Frankenstrike and Snarrow's fusion is really good. Honestly, I like how his like arms kind of not necessarily looks like bandages, but it kind of looks like it kind of reminds me of the gray texture from the like nasty Krabby Patty honestly. I like how he has like the wrist like bracelet things that Frankenstrike has, and I kind of like how they almost look like decayed or rotten, and the same goes for his towers. Instead of the long hair, he actually has the bandages in a very like curly again confetti-like pattern. That's pretty cool. And I like how his suit has a mixture of the glowing lines of Snarrow, but also the techno patterns of Frankenstrike. I think this one gets a very solid A tier. Honestly, I don't want to rank every Snarrow design as an S tier. I'm kind of expecting myself to do that for almost all of them. I'm sorry, maybe it's not that interesting to really expect that, but listen, I'm biased. I don't care. Snarrow's perfection. The only reason I think this gets A over S is because I'm comparing it to other fusions of other aliens, and I think it's just a little below S. Ghost Freak and Cannibal is a weird one. His eye looks... it kind of looks like a baby begging for something, or like some shit like that. I do kind of like the like vein things on his arms and his fingers kind of like being really like wrinkly. That's kind of neat. And I do like how his balls are purple instead of like yellow. I do like how a lot of Ghost Freak fusions implement purple because it's a scare, so that's kind of a neat touch as well. Honestly, this one is okay. I don't really care for Cannibal's design or a lot of his fusions, but the Ghost Freak one's neat. I think this one's gonna get a C tier though, only because again, if I'm comparing all the other fusions, I don't think this one deserves to be in B when comparing to the rest of them, but it's still a design that I do like. Forearms and Accelerate. Ooh, this one's actually really good looking. I love how Accelerate's tail looks with the red actually. The claws look fantastic. The face has the markings of both Accelerate and Forearms. That's really good. Like, this one looks really nice. I actually think this one deserves an A tier. This is one of my favorite Forearms fusions so far. This Heat Blast fusion with Frankenstrike does what I wish that the Heat Blast fusion with Forearms did and made the rocks a little darker to make it feel like it meshes more with the other alien it's fusing with. I wish every line on Frankenstrike's pants had the magma texture, but unfortunately it doesn't. And I wish the towers had some sort of like nuclear thing that kind of like what Energy would kind of implement honestly later on in the franchise. So that's a little disappointing. But everything else about the design, particularly the torso and the top half of him, is pretty good. I think this one's gonna get a B tier. This is one I like a lot. Next is Upgrade and Wildvine's fusion, which I like a lot. I love how instead of a techno pattern we have curling vines. Kind of reminds me a lot of Marble Garden from Sonic 3. And I also really like the coloration of the green they used here. Instead of being like the neon green or the dark green that Wildvine has, it's more of like a mix between the two. Honestly, this fusion reminds me of like an old statue at a ruin that would get activated via like some sort of booby trap or something. This is actually a really solid design. It kind of looks like a galvanic mechamorph that was kind of like taken over by a mutant plant or something. It's actually pretty cool. This one gets a solid A tier. So if I'm not mistaken, gray matter wasn't available on the DNA Lab website, but there were some gray matter fusions drawn. Not nearly as much as all the other aliens, but still a few, so I should talk about them. Starting off with gray matter and Cannibal, and what a fusion to start with. His hands are so fucking big. He looks like that one alien that's made up in Omniverse, Quad Smack or something. Like, holy shit. I think this is probably my least favorite of the gray matter designs, so I think this one is going to go into D tier. This one is like, I don't know, I'm not too big on it, honestly. Upchuck and Diamond Head is a very simple fusion between the two. The only thing that's kind of unique I like is the black and white pattern used for his legs, and the fact that his like little bulbs on the back of his head is actually the spikes Diamond Head has. Otherwise, I think this one gets a basic C tier. This is very simple. Now we're talking when it comes to Heat Blast fusions, because now we have Heat Blast and Ghost Freak. I love that instead of using the regular Ghost Freak head, they use the Scare's skull head. That is such a good idea. I love that the like rocks have a more of a veiny pattern to them. I love the flame head. Like, this is so good. If I had to nitpick anything, I kind of wish his fingers were like sharp, but that's not that big of a deal. This is S tier, 100% S tier. Snarrow and Stinkfly. I kind of like how this one kind of keeps the proportions of the limbs of Snarrow, but also gives us the Stinkfly body. I like how his wings are glowing the neon green that the patterns on Snarrow has, and I like how his face kind of has almost like a mask kind of pattern where you can see eye holes, but he still has the eye stalks with the eyes being over there. That's kind of cool. I also like the golden tail. That's a neat touch as well. The bandaged legs are cool. I like how his fingers look. I think this one's pretty good. Overall, I give this one a B tier. Cannonbolt and Wildmutt go really well together. I love that he has like the Cannonbolt back shells, but he still has the little quills of Wildmutt, and I think the fangs and like the whole body shape looks so good. I love how his elbows are shaped. I love the ball placements. I love how his hands look. It's almost like a perfect mix between Cannonbolt's claws and Wildmutt's claws. Like, this is very solid. Honestly, this one gets an A tier. Blitzwolf for an upgrade is like, okay, I guess. I do kind of like how the front of his face kind of reminds me of the bite that Upgrade merges with in Side Effects, which is kind of neat. And I do like how his tail kind of has like this unique like spike pattern near the curve of it. That's kind of cool. I don't think they really do anything that specially unique for this design, so I think this one's going to get a C tier. As for Upchuck and Wildmutt, this is a design that I really like. I love the colors used here of the orange and browns together. I love how his tongues look. I love how he just looks like a mutant gummy worm. He kind of reminds me of like those cockroach things from Infinity Train. I never watched the show, but I do know about them. And I love how he has bulbs not only on the back of his head, but also on his elbows too. I feel like this fusion's low-key a sleeper hit. I kind of want to give this one S tier. This is a really good design. Next we have Wildvine and Gray Matter. This one looks like an old man, honestly. I do kind of like what this one does. Honestly, I feel like this one would benefit without a suit in mind. I don't know, the suit looking like that just feels off to me, especially since there's still like Wildvine petal patterns on the suit itself. That just doesn't really feel that right. Also, I don't know how I feel about a Wildvine head, even if it's in Gray Matter's shape, having like the two little like petal things instead of one. Not too big of a fan of that. So I know you wouldn't really call them petals, but I'm kind of forgetting the word that you would use for those, so my bad. I think this one could go into C tier. Honestly, the thing that saves it is the fact that they still keep the fly track. If they got rid of that entirely, that would kind of suck. Honestly, I feel like what they could have done is give him the eye shoulders in this design too. That would have helped a lot as well, because I feel like that's such a great part about Wildvine's design that makes him feel so unique that taking it out just makes the fusion feel less interesting. As for Accelerate and Frankenstrike, this one is pretty good. I love how he has more than two towers. I'm not sure what that thigh strap thing is really, but it kind of reminds me of the technopathic stuff that Dr. Victor does. It kind of looks like it's all just like fused in with his body. That's really cool. And I do like how he still has the different like skin patterns which also go onto his tail. That's also really neat. I also like that the balls on his feet are more of a bronze color to match the metal on Frankenstrike's design, and I also really love how his eyes look, and the hair looks really good, and he has the sideburns. That's actually really good. I love that a lot. This one gets an S tier. This is a really good mix between Accelerate and Frankenstrike. As for Forearms and Blitzwolfer, this is one I feel like I shouldn't care for that much, but weirdly enough, I kinda like this one. Something about how his face looks. I don't know, something about it giving like, you know, the like weird like bumpy parts of Forearms' face, but with like the snout and head shape of Blitzwolfer actually works really well, and I love the paler shades of like a pinkish red on parts of the ends of his arms and feet. I honestly think this goes into A tier. The only thing stopping it from being an S, honestly, is the fact that there's no tail, which I think would have actually worked well with this design, and the fact that his jumpsuit's a little bit on the basic side. That's not too big of a deal when it's an alien on its own, but when you're fusing two different jumpsuit designs together, I would like it to be a little more unique. And now we have 100, I'm gonna just say right now, one of my absolute favorite fusions, Ghost Freak and Diamond Head. For one fact and one fact only, referencing the Coridium from Season 3. Hello, post-Alazonia. I mispronounced that wrong. It's Corodium. My bad. The purple crystals, the uneven spikes on his shoulders, the fact that his crystals on his back are like decaying and like not perfect. I love the streaks on him, I love the head shape, the rib cage, the little pointy little legs that are so super thin, the claw. Perfect. Perfection. Absolutely amazing. I love this design. S tier. Easily the best fusion, honestly. At least one of the best. I shouldn't say that. As for Frankenstrike and Cannonbolt, this one is really nice. I love how the hair is on, like, parts of his arm. This is something I wanted to bring up eventually in my retrospective, but I'll just bring it up here since, you know, it's like one of the only times it'll ever be a subject of conversation. But is there implication that Cannonbolt's hair is all over his body, considering that he has, like, a little ponytail in Game Over? Because did anyone else realize that? Or just me? Or maybe I'm overthinking. I don't know. I love that he has like bolts in between his fingers. I love how he has like sort of like, I want to call them gears. I don't know what you would call them. They kind of look like lids to like a sewer entrance on his like shoulders and his wrist. Like it's so good. The claws, the like he has like one of the stripes on only one of his legs to show an unevenness in his design. I'm not sure how I feel about the little goatee or like the little snout he has, but this is great. A tier easily. So we've had a couple of bangers in a row. So let's talk about one of my least favorite designs, Diamond Head and Heat Blast. I will give credit to having certain rocks being a different pattern to sort of represent Diamond Head's suit colors is a kind of okay idea, but this design just feels really uncreative. Honestly, this is gonna get an F tier. This is my least favorite from memory, so I don't know if there's any worse than this from my memory, but yeah, this is F tier. I don't think this fusion's that good, honestly. Next, we have Snarrow and Blitzwolfer, and I love that they take the opportunity to reference Anubis. I kind of wish he had a tail, but I know Anubis doesn't actually have a tail, but it still would have looked really good for this design. They don't do like a lot with this design, but enough to where I feel like it deserves a solid A tier. As for Stinkfly and Upgrade, the only thing I feel like I would have changed about this design is maybe either A, make the wings sort of reverse colors where it's green with black techno patterns, or maybe change the legs to be neon green or something to make it feel a little bit more interesting than just a basic white. I honestly think this design is a little solid, even if it's not on like the most intricate side. I think this one gets a B tier. As for Heat Blast and Upchuck, we're back to the basics when it comes to Heat Blast fusions, so yeah, C tier. This one's okay, nothing crazy. For Ghost Freak and Blitzwolfer, I love this design. The mixture of Blitzwolfer's head shape and the Zaskare skull is really good, and I love how instead of like pointy elbows, he has like the tentacles peeping out of his skin. That's really cool. I also love how instead of just being on the ground, he's levitating, as you could tell, thanks to like his tail trail and everything. Like it's great. This is a very good design. This one, I feel like the only thing I would change is maybe instead of making him the Ghost Freak colors, I would make him more of like maybe a darker blue or something. I'm not entirely sure if that would necessarily work, but I would like to see him in a different color. I think this one gets an A tier. Gray Matter and Frankenstrike. I do like how his hair looks. Like mixing that with the little stripe on his head is actually a pretty neat idea. I kind of wish his wristbands had like a little bit more detail, but that's all I can really think of as a flaw. The one single tower is a little funny. I think this one I could put into B tier. I like it. For Accelerate and Wild Mutt, I do like how we have the Wild Mutt head with the Accelerate helmet shape kind of like mixed together. And I do like how the under half of like his body has the white pattern while the top half is the black. One thing I definitely would have done is given him the quills on his arms as well. He has it on his back and also on his tail, which look pretty good, but I definitely would have put it on his arms as well. Overall, I think this design is pretty good, so I'm gonna give this one a B tier. Forearms in Wildvine is one that weirdly works, even though I don't know how well a muscular plant should work. I like that he has like bigger seeds given forearms as bigger build, and I actually think that the suit or like pants for him kind of work in this case, although I would have given him some sort of belt, kind of like what Omniverse does with a lot of its aliens. I also kind of like how the like separations for like the lighter and darker greens have a bit of a thicker line. That's pretty cool too. I think this one actually works a lot better than I expect, so I'm gonna give this one an A tier. For Heat Blast and Stinkfly, again, kind of basic, but I do like how his face like actually has like the two little eye stalks shown instead of just having two eyes like regular Heat Blast, and I do like how the rock pattern also goes to half of his wings. Kind of wish they did the same for the tail, but again, this one's a little basic. I also think that the little like extra spikes on the back of his front legs is also pretty neat. I think this one gets away with getting a B tier. It does a little more than the usual basic Heat Blast fusion. As for Snarrow and Cannibal, honestly, I like a lot about this design, except honestly the face. I don't know how I feel about Snaro's mask looking like it's being warped or something. I'm not too big on that. I kind of would have preferred if they just had the cannibal face with Snaro elements. While I like that his claws have the gold decaying motif, I kinda wish his balls had a similar thing. Like, they could have definitely done something with that to give it some Snaro elements instead of the regular yellow for cannibal. I think this one is okay. Honestly, probably one of the weaker Snaro fusions, so this one's gonna get a C tier. Upchucking Gray Matter is so weird. I feel like the worst part about this is the suit. They opt for the upchuck suit with gray matter patterns, which is not the worst thing ever, but I don't know, I don't think I really like it that much. I feel like this design doesn't really work together because I feel like if you did like the gray matter proportions, it wouldn't feel very upchuck, but I don't like how this looks at all. He kinda has like a Dr. Eggman body going on. I think the face is probably the best part of this design, but it's not that good, honestly. This one's gonna get a D tier. For Accelerate and Upgrade, I'm so glad they went with blue for the techno patterns instead of the usual green. I feel like it makes it more unique compared to other Upgrade fusions. I like that he still has the Accelerate elbows, but still like the wide flatness of Upgrade's arms, and I really like how his head shape is, kinda combining the Upgrade like tube look and the helmet sharpness of Accelerate. The only thing I would have done, and this isn't fair to the design honestly because this happens afterwards, but I kinda would have liked the techno patterns kinda overlapped on his body similar to UAF Upgrade, or Omniverse Upgrade for that matter. Other than that, I think this one's gonna get an A tier because I think this is actually a really good fusion. As for Ghost Freak and Wild Mud, I'm gonna be a little bit of a hypocrite because I kinda gave backlash to the Upgrade and Wild Mud fusion for this, but I actually think the eye in this case actually works. I feel like it'd still be pretty good and freaky looking without it, but the eye actually really does help in this case. I love how the teeth look especially, holy shit, and the fact that he has tentacles coming out like a tongue, the tentacles for the claws and on his back. This design is so good. This one honestly deserves an S tier. As for Diamond Head and Cannibal, this one's kind of a weird one. I'm starting to notice a track record where a lot of the Cannibal fusions are kind of missing if their face is done wrong, and this is one of those cases. This one's a little more on the goofy side, and not in a good way. Also, I don't know how I feel about the balls being kind of like crystal orbs, kind of like Crystal Man from Mega Man 5. It should work, but something about it feels off, but I'm not entirely sure what. Honestly, this one gets a D tier. Comparing this to the other fusions, I don't think it stacks up at all. Now for Snaro and Heat Blast, which is definitely pretty creative compared to the other Heat Blast designs. One downside is definitely the lack of bandages in this design besides his fingers and toes. I kind of would have liked if he had the back bandages with little rocks. That would have been a cool touch. The face, while unique, isn't anything crazy, and I do like how his rocks are more darker charcoal type color. I think this one gets a B tier. I like it, but I don't really love it. Next we have Forearms and Upgrade. I think this one, again, basic but works. One thing I would have changed is instead of having one singular eye like Upgrade has, I would have done Upgrade's eye, but 4 of them and smaller to replicate Forearms' face. I also would have probably have it where like the torso and the stomach kind of connect together, but I do kind of like how he has a little bit of the black and green for where his Omnitrix badge is. I think this one gets a B tier. It's pretty decent. Next we have Blitzwolfer and Wildvine, and this design is so good. I feel like Wildvine details just help like every design that he has for the most part. I really like that he has thorns sticking out to where the sharp elbows for Blitzwolfer would be, but I kind of wish they did the same for his fingers. I do like how it's kind of like the ends of his tentacles, and I actually don't mind the lack of a fly trap in this design because it kind of looks like his head is coming out of like a separate plant monster, like it's a mouth with a head coming out of it. That's actually pretty cool. I think this one snuck its way into S tier. Our last Gray Matter fusion, besides the one that actually appears in the show we'll get to later on, is Gray Matter and Snaro. I never noticed this until I actually looked at the picture up close, but this design has sharp teeth like Gray Matter. I do like that instead of making him mouthless, because I feel like giving him the mouth actually makes it a little more creative. I really like how instead of doing the Gray Matter suit, they stick with the Snaro bandages and the like black and green pattern. I think that all looks really good, and I do like how his back bandages look as well. I think this one gets an A tier. This is definitely my favorite Gray Matter design, but mainly for the fact that, well, you know, it has Snaro in it. Next we have probably one of the most known DNA Lab fusions, Accelerate and Diamond Head. If I manage to somehow find footage for it, I'll show it off, but I remember there used to be a Flash game, like a fan-made Ben 10 game, with this fusion as a playable character. As far as the fusion itself goes, oh my god, this one is so good. I love how his arms look with the giant sharp diamond blades. I love how he has so many spikes on his back. They could have just done 2 or maybe like 4, but no, they do a whole array of it, of different shapes and sizes. I love that. I think his face is a perfect mesh between Diamond Head and Accelerate. I love how the tail is crystal as well. This one definitely deserves S tier and deserves to be well known. This is phenomenal. Upchuck and Stinkfly kind of reminds me a little bit of like that baby Stinkfly from Omniverse or like Stinky Fly from Classic, so that's kind of neat actually. I could do without the pupils, but other than that, it's not that big of a deal. This one I think is fine enough, so it's gonna get its way into C tier. Forms in Wildmutt is one that I think works a lot, and honestly, again, this is a Wildmutt fusion that actually works with the eyes in mind. Without it, it would just feel like a muscular Wildmutt with an extra pair of arms, but you could definitely see a little bit more forms in here than you'd think you would expect. I also like that his eyes are red. Does this imply that Wildmutt's eyes naturally would be red? I always figured they'd be orange because of the transformation sequence. I think if I had to add anything, I would give him the fingerless gloves that Forms wears, but other than that, this design's great, and I love how his shoulder pauldron is a little different looking compared to the classic Wildmutt design. Also, it's a little hard to tell, but his teeth is like a darker shade of like, almost like a pale purple. I actually really like that a lot. I think this one gets A tier. This is a really good fusion. For Blitzwolfer and Heat Blast, I guess this one's not too bad. I like how his tail and his elbows do have a little bit of a rock pattern that trails off, but other than that, there's nothing really crazy about the design. I do like how his face has to split like Blitzwolfer's mouth does, but other than that, nothing really interesting. I feel like what would have helped this design actually get a bit of a higher rank is maybe make the flames a different color. Fusions like Upgrade and Ghost Freak benefit from it, so I wish other fusions did that. Like maybe giving this like a pale blue or grayish type of flame color. As is, I think this one just gets C tier. It's basic. Cannonball and Wildvine is definitely one of the better Cannonball fusions. I do like how he has thorns on his elbows and right on top of his head. It's actually a pretty good compromise to the lack of a fly trap. I also like that his feet kind of have like the tendrils Wildvine has, so it kind of looks like 2 Wildvines kind of like splitting, like one Wildvine just split open or something. I also think this is one of the Cannonball fusions that actually has a face that doesn't look completely horrible, so you know what? A rank. This one's actually pretty good. Next we have Frankenstrike and Wildmutt, and I don't know about this one. I like this one, but it also feels kind of messy. I guess I'll start with the face. The eyes, I'm not too big of a fan of it being on this design, and they try to give him like the Frankenstrike hair and sideburns with Wildmutt's like regular jaw, and I feel like this one would work if it wasn't for the chin quills. I feel like if you got rid of that, it would look better as a fusion instead of just feeling like, I don't know, weirdly put together. I don't know how to describe it. I do like how he has a set of 4 towers instead of the usual 2, and I do like the bolts on like where his like ears, I guess, would be, and his nostril guild things kind of extend to his back. That's pretty cool. I think this one gets a B tier. Something about it throws me off, but I do like this fusion a lot. Next we have Accelerate and Ghost Freak, and at this point you can just tell that the Halloween aliens get such special detail. I love the claws and how long and curved they are. I also love how his tails kind of has like this like thick like Ghost Freak vein rim. That's really cool. And the fact that they have this scare skull kind of like indented into the Accelerate helmet shape, that's pretty cool as well. It kind of looks like he's wearing some sort of like Grim Reaper hood but without sleeves. I think this one gets A tier. I don't think it's like one of the best for Accelerate and Ghost Freak, but if they had to be fused together, this is a really good design. Next we have Upchuck and Upgrade, and I think this one's alright. I do like that they have like the Upgrade circuit patterns for his legs, and I do like how his bulbs also have like a circuit pattern as well. I also like that the gills have a circuit pattern, and honestly the circuit patterns are the best part about this design. Otherwise, it's a little basic. I think this one gets a B tier though. Something about it in its simplicity is actually pretty neat. For Heat Blast and Wildvine, I do like how he has flames coming out of his eye shoulders, kind of like Ben 10,000's Heat Blast, and I do love how his rocks actually have thorn patterns or a bit of a petal look. I think this is honestly one of the better Heat Blast fusions, so you know what? Maybe this one's a hot take, but I think this one honestly deserves an A tier. This one's a lot better than I thought it would be. Now we have Snarrow and Forearms, and I think this one looks pretty good. I like how it feels like a muscular build for Forms, but it actually has the Snarrow proportions, and it honestly feels like a good mesh between the both of them. I like how the face looks and how he kind of has like a helmet almost, and I also really like how he has like almost like Wildmutt-like quills for his bandages, and I love how, again, this is a thing with a lot of the Snarrow designs, how like curled up his fingers are. This one is going into A tier. As for Diamond Head and Stinkfly, I think this one is really weird in a good way. It's a little hard to tell, but he has the diamond head patterns, but he still also keeps the stripes of Stinkfly. I like that. That was not needed, but they do that and I really like it. I think his wings could look a little more crystal-like, and the fact that he has the diamond head legs instead of bug Stinkfly legs is actually a little bit of a neat creative deviation to the expected. I think the only thing I would have done, honestly, and maybe it wouldn't look that good, but I kind of want to see what he would look like with more of like an olive green crystal design, kind of like Stinkfly's actual colors. But other than that, I think this one looks really good. I think this one gets a B tier. It's actually pretty decent. Ghost Freak and Upgrade is one that I think works a lot. I think it's good that they have him with like a black separation rather than the white separation, because it kind of mixes with the Ghost Freak veins. I like his eye, but I kind of wonder what they would do if they maybe had like the Ghost Freak colors with like the upgrade eye. This is another Ghost Freak fusion I think works really well with like the finger shapes of Ghost Freak, and I do like how instead of having the white separation on like all of his legs, it kind of cuts off a little bit. It's such a minor thing to nitpick about, but I do like it. This one honestly gets A tier. As for Wildvine and Accelerate, I feel like the one thing that kind of throws me off is the tail looking exactly like a tendril, so it kind of looks like he just has Wildvine's legs. I feel like this tail should have had like thorns coming off of like kind of like a dinosaur tail, because you know Accelerate is based off of a velociraptor after all. I also think that for like a helmet design, they should have had like the fly trap kind of be like the helmet, and then like have little teeth coming to like the sides of it, like the borders. I'm not sure how that would work though, but it would be a neat idea. I think this is a design that definitely could have benefited from two things. One, making him more of a blue-green rather than a green just like Wildvine, and also getting rid of the suit. I don't think the suit works for his design. If he was like an octopus alien, yeah, but since it's a fusion of Wildvine and Accelerate, I don't think it works that well. I kind of want to give it a B tier, only because it's based off two aliens I really love, but to be a little more fair, I think this one gets a C tier when I compare it to other designs. As for Frankenstrike and Stinkfly, holy shit! I didn't notice this at first, but he has the towers with wings coming out of it. I kind of wish the wings were like the regular Stinkfly colors to kind of like better show that off, but they kind of blend in, but it's still pretty cool. He has like little bumps on his legs and his arms, and like he kind of still has the Frankenstrike hair and sideburns, but it's the same like texture as the neck veins. I don't know how I feel about that. I also think the tail could have benefited from having some sort of like wire trail or something, but I also really like how his arms honestly look like stakes or something, or like plugs you would put into like a machine. That looks really good. This one I think I'm gonna give a B tier. There's some things that do throw me off, but overall this design's pretty good. Heat Blast and Cannonbolt. I guess I like how the balls have flames coming out of it, but that's really it. C tier. I don't have much to say, and I'm not going to waste time trying to think of anything else for him. Upgrade and Snaro's fusion kind of reminds me of the Heat Blast fusion with Snaro. This one I feel like is a little bit on the weaker side because the bandage parts of Snaro don't really have much detail because it's trying to replicate Upgrade's character design. I also think this one would have worked better with the Upgrade eye pattern as well, instead of like the two Snaro eyes. I think one thing they definitely should have done is have the bandages with little circuit patterns, whether it be the front of the bandages or the back of the bandages. That would have definitely helped the design feel a little more creative. As is, this one's a bit more of the basic side for both Upgrade and Snaro, so it's going to get a C tier. Now we have the two Wild Boys, Wildvine and Wild Mutt, and this design is so good. I love how he has eye shoulders, but he doesn't have an eye on his head, so it feels very alien. Kind of reminded me of like a xenomorph, honestly. I also love the fly trap being used in this design to be more curved like Wild Mutt's head shape, and the fact that his fingers actually kind of look like tree roots. I am curious of how this design would look like with a more of an orange-brown color, kind of like autumn leaves or something, considering Wild Mutt is orange, but this is still really good. I think this one honestly gets S tier. Now we have Cannonball and Upchuck, and I don't know, a lot of the Cannonball fusions don't work for me except for like a few exceptions, because I don't really like this one, honestly. I am glad that they keep the balls yellow, so that way there's a bit more of a Cannonball color mixed in with the Upchuck, but I don't know, maybe if the balls were like a darker shade of green or even white, honestly. Something about it just, this design does not, I don't really fuck with this. Honestly, F tier. Now we move on to Diamond Head and Blitzwolfer, and I do like how this one has a very unique jumpsuit pattern. This one kind of has like a belt thing going on, and it looks really good. Like, this is very creative. I also like the fact that he has like the ears in the shape of Diamond Head's like back horn thing? What the hell would you call this? I know I'm gonna sound very redundant when I say this, but I feel like this one could have benefited from different colored crystals being more of a Blitzwolfer color. I guess I just really like Blitzwolfer's color scheme. But as it stands, this is actually really good, and I think this one honestly deserves A tier. Very close to perfect, but not quite there. Now we have Frankenstrike and Ghost Freak, and the first thing I noticed immediately is two things. One, the like tubes across his body is so cool and unique. I would have liked if they were kind of like the colors of the tentacles from Ghost Freak, but it still looks really good. And also, I never noticed, but his badge is on like his arm. Not even like his wrist, but his arm. That is such an odd placement. I also like that his towers have like little purple tips. It's such a small detail, but I did notice it. And I like how his bolts are purple too. This one's gonna get a B tier. This one's pretty good. Next we have Accelerate and Stinkfly, which I feel like this one kinda works. I like how there's combinations of both Stinkfly and Accelerate's jumpsuit patterns, and I like how his tail kinda has the stripes of Accelerate, but also in the colors of Stinkfly. I think the wings could have benefited from being a light shade of blue, but other than that, this one's okay. The wrinkles on his face also add a little extra detail, and I do like how instead of Accelerate's eyes, it just has the place of black eye stalks. That's pretty cool too. This one I'm gonna give a B tier. I like it a little more than average. Now we have the two dog aliens, Blitzwolfer and Wildmutt, and I really like how instead of going the usual like gray or just orange, there's a mix of brown in this design, and I love how this one actually emphasizes Blitzwolfer's splitting jaw. I like how his hands kind of have the Blitzwolfer thing going on, but still with the Wildmutt shape, and I also really like how his ears have a more of a paler peach color. I was gonna give this one an A rank originally, but the more I think about it, the more I actually end up liking it, so this one's gonna get an S tier. Next we have Forearms and Diamond Head, and I do like how this one has red crystals to replicate forearms. Kinda wish he had like little like crystal bumps like forms as like little like spike things on his arms, but it's not too big of a deal. I also do like the fact that he kind of has like a slight amount of detail for like under his eyes. That's pretty cool. Although I would have really liked to see maybe like, this would have been too much to ask probably, but maybe like fingerless gloves in the form of like black crystals. That'd be kind of cool. I do wish this jumpsuit had the diamond head pattern thing going on because I really do love when they do that, but this isn't too bad. Honestly, I think this one gets an A tier. Just barely gets to A. Accelerate and Upchuck I think works well. My only downside, honestly, instead of having like the bulbs on like the side of his helmet, I would have put it on his back only. This doesn't really look that good, but everything else about it looks pretty solid. I think this one has a pretty good balance between Accelerate and Upchuck details, so I think this one deserves A tier. Next we have Snarrow and Ghost Freak, and oh, this design is so good. A ribcage glowing pattern. Oh my god, I love it. There's a scare skull with the Snarrow motif, and I love how he has like a glowing green inside of his mouth. My only downside, I wonder what this would look like with purple lines glowing instead of green, or at the very least making the bandages more of like a grayish brown rather than the Snarrow colors. This is still so good though. I have to give this S tier. This is fantastic. Next we have Upgrade and Cannonbolt, and I don't like this design that much. I like the colors and everything, and I think the jumpsuit and body build is better than most of the Cannibal designs, but something about it really throws me off. I think it's the face, really. This one would have definitely have benefited from like the upgrade eye alone instead of the two eyes, or at the very least make it, I don't know, like maybe this one could have benefited from the regular Cannibal body, just slightly slimmer. I do like how his claws are the neon green like upgrade, so that's a neat touch, and the circuit patterns themselves are actually pretty well designed. This one I'm gonna give a C. This one I could defend somewhat, so I think it's okay. Next up we have Blitzwolfer and Frankenstrike, and I think this one is definitely one of the best for both aliens. The sideburns actually mix really well with Blitzwolfer's head shape, and I also love the bronze blades to be his sharp elbows. I love how the elbows are the most creative thing about most of these Blitzwolfer designs, honestly. The only downside, and one thing I'm really shocked they didn't do, is have his tail be like a giant wire. Like, that seems like such an obvious thing to do. But this is still pretty good, so I think this one honestly deserves S tier. Diamond Head and Wildvine is a pretty decent fusion, I think. I do like how his flytrap has the crystals, and I actually really like how his suit is incorporated, even if it's really simple. I kinda wish he had more crystals on his back, kinda similar to Chromastone and Alien Force, considering that Wildvine has 2 pairs of 3 seeds, so that would've been nice to see, but the 2 spikes I guess are okay. I'm not sure how the feet are supposed to be. Are they like flexible crystals? Like, how does that work? Or is it just like really sharp and it's hard to walk? Like, I would hate to be this fucking creature. I think this one deserves C tier because comparatively speaking, when ranking it against the other designs, I think this one's definitely one of the more simple ones. Next we have Snarrow and Upchuck, and I love the fact that his open stomach, similar to the Mummy in Season 3, has teeth around him. That is so good. That alone makes it an S tier. I'm not even kidding, but I love everything else too. I love the Snarrow like suit design all over his body. I love how like when he opens his stomach, his like bandages are like not perfect. There's like, you know, like a hole in one of them. His head shape and little spikes, the teeth. Yes, S tier. Love this. Absolutely perfect. Now we have Cannibal and Blitzwolfer, which I think is one of the lesser designs we've seen so far. I feel like the lack of ears is the biggest weakness of this design. Like, that alone just makes this look really fucked up. It's like a weird, like, mutant killer whale or something with muscles. I'm not sure if adding like Blitzwolf fur or like a jumpsuit would help much, but yeah, I don't really like this one that much. This one's gonna get a D rank. Stinkflight and Wildmutt actually blend pretty well together. The head shape of Wildmutt actually looks like a Stinkfly head, but just like bigger, and the jumpsuit looks good. I like how his legs are kind of like Stinkfly legs, but in Wildmutt's shape. I like how his fingers have the Stinkfly glove textures. That's all actually pretty good. I feel like the quills would have helped a lot, especially for his arms, and honestly, I kind of feel like you could get away with giving him another pair of legs, but honestly, this one's pretty good. A tier. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, Accelerate and Heat Blast's fusion would have been so close to S tier if they just did one change. Make his fire blue. It was right there. God, and then like maybe black rocks, it would have been so fucking peak. But unfortunately, since they stick with Heat Blast colors, honestly, maybe I'm being a little hypocritical with this. A rank. I actually like this one a lot, but it's so close to S rank. Things I like about this are the fact that his claws are a darker shade of red. I like how his faceplate is actually like segmented parts with like a nice design with his eye streaks. I guess that might imply that's what the lines look like under his helmet. I also really like how the tail like has the stripes but they're rocks. That's actually pretty neat. I would have liked to see maybe like balls on his feet, kind of like little meteors or something, but I'm not sure if that would have worked out well. Overall though, I actually fuck with this design a lot despite its simplicity. Now for Ghost Freak and Upchuck. I do like how the tentacles are the tongue. That makes a lot of sense. I kind of wish his teeth were sharp though, considering that Ghost Freak usually has sharp teeth, and I think it would have worked in this case. Also, this is another one with a weird badge placement. It's not even on his wrist. This time it's on his his hand. I feel like what would have helped maybe is if maybe there was like a purple stomach or something, or like maybe if he was a different color. I'm not sure. I do like this one, but I'm gonna give this one a B tier, only because I feel like there's so much more that could be done. They just don't do it. Now we have Frankenstrike and Wildvine, and I love the fact that his legs are giant wires. They're like a precursor to feedback in a way. I love that's the same case for his hands. And like, oh my god, look at the bronze thorns. They're like fucking like daggers. They look so good. Honestly, if I had to nitpick a little bit, I wish that there was vines like wrapped around the towers or something, kind of like technology that's like been abandoned for years or something. That'd be really cool. I also really like how the techno wires are actually black and white like a jumpsuit rather than the bronze. It actually makes it a little more unique. The seeds being replaced by bolts are pretty good, and I also like how his face looks. I think this one is a very easy S tier. As for Snarrow and Diamond Head, I think this one's really good. I love how the back bandages have like actual like crystal spikes along them, and I also love how instead of having just the black and white suit for Diamond Head be a pattern, half of it is black and the other half is the bandages. That's a neat touch. And I also like the little like, I don't know what you would call it, but the little like darker gold part for his chest. That's pretty cool too. I think this one goes into A tier. This one is pretty good. As for Blitzwolfer and Accelerate, I think this one is pretty good. This one actually looks more like a killer whale than the Cannonball Blitzwolfer one did, but at least they have the ears this time. I like the little black lines on his side to kind of emulate the Blitzwolfer jumpsuit, and I also like how he has a white separation for his feet and white balls too. I think this one is good, but not amazing, so this one's gonna go into B tier. Whoa, buddy, why the long face? Holy shit. Yeah, Stinkflight and Cannonball. I feel like this is one that would get a lot of flack, but maybe I'm weird for this. I think this is one of Cannonball's better fusions. I think the face works a little better here because it's not just completely cannonball shaped, but it's just enough different to actually make it look okay. And I do like how his he has like 4 big giant stubs for legs, and he still has a tail, that's pretty neat. And I also like that the balls are the same color as Stinkfly's wings, and the same goes for his back shell. The pattern from Stinkfly's jumpsuit is incorporated really well in this design as well. I think this one honestly gets an A tier. Might be a hot take, probably is a hot take, but I actually really like this one. I actually really like Wildvine and Upchucks. This one I think incorporates the jumpsuit pretty well, and I do like how he still has the shoulder eyes. I think the head looks pretty good, and the flytrap actually makes the design really come together. I also like that his tail is like not exactly like the tendrils, but it's like a giant big one to show off that it is a tail. Honestly, there's not much to say other than this design is actually pretty solid, so this one's gonna get an A tier. Frankenstrike and Upgrade. Honestly, this one's pretty good, but considering that Upgrade is like a living metallic alien and Frankenstrike has technological like assets to his design, this one feels so criminally simple. Also a little weird, I never noticed this, but it's Frankenstrike's head shape, but it still has like Upgrade's eye. I don't think that works that well. I do like how his body looks, and I like the Upgrade parts of it, but there should be more Frankenstrike in this, so honestly this one's gonna get a C tier. As for Snarrow and Wildmutt, this one's really nice. Honestly, this is gonna sound weird, but I feel like this design would look a lot better if he was actually standing upwards with like the Snarrow posture. I do like how the Wildmutt face still has like the gold like mask on him, and he has like, instead of quills, it's like the bandages. It kind of looks like he's went through a shredder but survived. I also like how the glowing lines are incorporated on his stomach and his shoulders as well. And I also like how you can see little seeps of like a pinkish orange flesh, kind of like when you cut open a salmon or something. I think this one honestly deserves S tier. I think it's just, again, it's a Snarrow fusion. They're all so good. As for Ghost Freakin' Wildvine, is it even a mystery what I'm going to rank this? It's a clear S tier. It's like a withered tree or like a dead plant come back to life. I love the purple for his eyes. I love the like palish green color for his like branch, tendril, tentacles, whatever the fuck you want to call these. The thorns. Oh my god, this is such a good design. As for Diamond Head and Upgrade, I don't know how I feel about this one. I like how the body separation shows the Diamond Head pattern, but something about the techno like patterns being like crystal lines of the same color as Diamond Head, I would have much preferred neon green from Upgrade. In fact, now that I'm thinking about it, either black crystals with like green crystal lines or vice versa would have looked really good for this design and would have put it into S tier, honestly. But as is, I think this one gets a C tier. It's neat, but nothing crazy. Forearms and Upchuck actually is really good. I love that instead of like the little like spikes on his arms, it's like the little bubbles from like the back of Upchuck's head. He still has like forehead fat from forearms. I like that. I love that the jumpsuit is like the reverse colors that you would expect, and I also just think the textures look really good on this one. I think this one is getting an S tier. Forearms and Cannonbolt. This kinda works. I do like how instead of just having one color for the arm, he does have like the fingerless gloves, but it goes up to his like elbow. That's actually pretty cool. I like the balls being white to like match the colors of the jumpsuit for forearms, and I actually think the face looks not too bad in this one. I said before that Gray Matter and Cannonbolt's fusion look like Quad Smack. This one looks even more like Quad Smack. Yeah, I could give it a B tier. I like it. As for Frankenstrike and Forearms, this one works really well. Frankenstrike has inspirations from Hellboy, and this fusion just looks like Hellboy. I think this design's pretty cool, and I like how he has extra bolts on his body. I love the different shades of like paler reds or like a darker, like, it almost looks like he's made of like rotten meat. And considering, you know, Frankenstrike's a Frankenstein alien, that's really cool. I like the slight differences in his hairstyle, and I love that it merges with the strips on Forearms' face. To nitpick, I think the towers should have been maybe like a silver with black to match the jumpsuit colors, but that's not that big of a deal. This one is getting an A tier. As for the last three, of course I do want to talk about not only Stink Arms, but also the other two fusions that were in the show, but were in DNA Lab. As for Stink Arms, it's simple but decent. Considering that they actually had to worry about animating this fusion, they definitely didn't want to make it as intricate and detailed, considering that, you know, we've seen all the ones prior and they have so much intricacy and detail, it's amazing. This one I think goes into B tier. I like it. As for Diamond Matter, this one seems like a pretty good mixture of both Diamond Head and Gray Matter. I love that the rims of his sleeves and also the rims of his ankles have the like pattern, but it's like vice versa. And I think both the head shapes of Gray Matter and Diamond Head mix really well together. This one is going to get an S tier. And last but not least, we have Heat Jaws, Heat Blast, and Rip Jaws, and sadly the only Rip Jaws fusion. Oh my god, the Rip Jaws fusions would have gone crazy. As far as my thoughts on this one goes, I know this one seems so lazy. It kind of reminds me of those like toys where you can mix and match the parts of different aliens and shit. But I'm gonna be honest, you guys are gonna hate me for this, but I don't give a shit. S tier. This one is so funny and so randomly low-key lazy that it kind of circles back to being amazing. He also gets the most screen time in the actual episode, and I actually do enjoy his moments, so you know what? S tier. I don't care. I like this one. And that about does it for my thoughts on all the DNA Lab fusions in the Classic series. It would have been cool if we had some for Alien Force or Onward, but for the ones we have here, there's a lot of really good ones. I didn't like every single one, but so many of them are so solid and so iconic in their own ways, and I kind of wish they appeared in the show in some way. Let me know what you think. Do you agree with these takes, or do you disagree? Thank you for all the support, and as always, happy night hunting.